back in Budapest, Hungary, to visit an important location for espionage history, the former headquarters of AVH, the Soviet KGB sister agency in Hungary until 1956, which today is a museum of that unique spy history. Welcome to Spy Spots. After the end of the Second World War, Hungary was under the influence of the Soviet Union, a member of Warsaw Pact. The Hungarian People's Republic, as it was called, was a communist state, and Soviet Union not only influenced it, but played a key role in many important government bodies, one of them being the country's intelligence apparatus. During that time, the intelligence service of the Hungarian People's Republic was AVH, the Államvédelmi Hatóság, or State Protection Authority in English, and that leads us to this building, which is currently operating as a museum under the name House of Terror. The building was initially the home of Hungary's Arrow Cross Party, basically the Nazi Party of Hungary that ruled the country during the Second World War before the Soviet Union, as a member of the Allied forces, took control of Hungary in the fight against the Axis. And after this dark part of Hungarian history, this became the home of the AVH, the newly established spy agency, which was operating almost like a regional extension of the Soviet Committee for State Security, the KGB, that until the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, that lasted 15 days before Soviet military sent the armed forces to invade Hungary and suppress it. Among others, this resulted in the dissolution of AVH, replacing it with the Ministry of Internal Affairs III, better known as the State Security Department of the Ministry of Interior, until 1989, which also marked the end of communism for Hungary with the Revolution of '89. Moving to today, in December 2000, the Public Foundation for the Research of Central and East European History and Society purchased it to create a museum that preserves all of that controversial history and particularly the secret aspects of it. And eventually, the museum opened on February 24, 2002. This imposing building, once an epicenter of historic developments for Hungary, has both permanent and temporary exhibitions. But even before you enter, it gives you a taste of what you are about to experience. All around it, you'll find the people that were detained, interrogated, or even executed in this building. And right outside its main entrance, you'll find the segment of the Berlin Wall, which, when it fell, marked the end of the Cold War along with communism for many European countries, including Hungary. As it says, it bisected a city, a country. It seemed to be imparable. It did not only demand fatal victims, it wanted to break our spines as well. It prevented us from planning a common future, so we pulled it down. And right besides this, an artistic representation of the Iron Curtain, the political and ideological barrier that split Europe in the middle. Apparently, we won't be presenting the entire museum in this episode, since that would require several hours to do it properly. However, we hope that this will inspire you to visit it and experience it on your own. That said, its heavy atmosphere continues as you enter the ground floor, and you are greeted with this, a T-55 tank, just like the ones that suppressed the revolution of 1956. There are more things on the ground, but moving to the first floor, we start with a deportation exhibition, where the centerpiece is a semi-hidden black car. As the museum's official website says, in 1951, thousands of the capital's upper middle class, entitled citizens were forcibly transferred to designated quarters in the countryside. It is their fate that is illustrated in the hall by way of contemporary photographs and documents. The Zim automobile on display is a frightening relic of the times. It evokes the infamous black car used by the communist political police to pick up its victims, usually in the middle of the night. Millions were in dread of these nocturnal visitors and the ringing of the bell that heralded their arrival. This is when the expression bell panic was coined. There are many other exhibitions on this floor, but one that is really worth sharing is this, which isn't a mock-up. It's an actual torture chamber, exactly as it was originally. As the museum says, this is the only room that was preserved in its original form. At the time it was referred to as the gym. On the wall we can see special instruments of torture, a note with nails, a lead-headed bamboo stick, an arrow-crossed truncheon, a club covered in leather with a lead spring. Here we have an exhibition for the anteroom of the Hungarian political police. Spies, politicians, law enforcement, all under the auspices of the Soviet Union. And right next to that, we have the office of AVAG's spy master, Gabor Peter. And this next exhibition contains over 800 documents from cases relating to political trials, indictments, sentences, appeals, records of investigations from the period of 1945-1956. Following that, we have this interesting display approach, with part of it showing the communist propaganda of the Cold War era, and another part of it, the post-Cold War change in advertisements, posters and so on. From the time of Karl Marx, it's generally accepted that communism is based on the abolition of religion, and this exhibition is a reminder of the persecution, suppression and imprisonment of members of the clergy. Once again, there are many more parts that you will find in this museum. This is just to give you a taste of it. The second floor has several exhibitions from the time that Hungary was led by the Arrows Cross Party, basically a Nazi organization that was part of the Axis forces. Although it has some impressive exhibitions, it's not as related to our content, so we'll only mention one of them. This. As Joseph Stalin had said, Hungary must be punished as an example to others. And this room is demonstrating that. How Soviet Union ensured that Hungary was secretly under their complete control, a job usually performed by the KGB. This is called the Room of Soviet Advisors. As the museum states, for a long time after 1945, Soviet advisors operating alongside Hungarian political, social and economic leaders endeavored to force their own methods and lifestyle onto Hungarian society. Documentaries and newsreel clips shown on the monitors in the wall evoke the Soviet presence. Again, there are many more things in this floor, but this is probably the closest one to our domain. And for last, we left the worst part of it, the basement. And as the museum states, Arrow-Cross thugs hold people whom they had rounded up to the cellar of their headquarters, where they were brutally beaten up. They kept their victims for shorter or longer periods in the former coal cellars, where many of them lost their lives. For the reconstructed cells, we also read that armed guards stood outside the cells. The prisoners were not allowed to sleep or clean themselves, and they had little access to food or water. Interrogations, usually at night, took place on the upper floors of the building, and the bestial interrogation methods of the basement were refined in accordance with Soviet KGB instructions. There is this hall for the Revolution of '56, and what we'd call today torture cells, like this, that, as the museum describes them, the wet cell, being called water up to your knees for days. The foxhole, the complete darkness in a room with only a meter-low ceiling. Or the detention cell, the insanity of confinement in a pit with half a meter of floor space, a torture chamber which reminds us the utter cynicism of authority. We are not in a distant military prison, not deep down in a dungeon, but on the avenue of the civil world, just half a meter from the pavement, from everyday life. Or this execution chamber, and many other parts that we'll not be covering in this episode. As the general director of the museum, Maria Smith, said, "The stories you see, hear and read in our museum will reach the very depth of your soul. Once acquainted with them, you will have a different view of Hungary's history, Hungarians themselves, and Europe's shared destiny." We hope that our austere, astonishing and uplifting exhibition will touch the hearts of our visitors. It confronts them with the great sacrifices that had to be made by people under inhuman dictatorships in order for us to live in freedom today, because Hungarians cannot live without freedom. The House of Terror Museum is a building which commemorates two tragic eras in Hungarian history. From 1944 to 1990, our nation was robbed from its independence and freedom, first by Arrow-Cross thugs, supported by German Nazis, and then by communists, backed by the Soviet Union. We have since recovered both our independence and freedom to become free citizens of an independent Hungary, because we, Hungarians, are a people of freedom. And that was probably the best way to close this episode of our Spy Spot series. This building, once the center of numerous covert and clandestine activities, was in one of the most central parts of the city, but very few had any idea of what was happening behind its walls. The same is happening today too in many parts of the world. An inconspicuous building might be hiding some of the biggest national security secrets. So always remember that nothing is as it seems.